Welcome, everybody. I'm Ed Friedman. For those of you who don't know me, I chair Friends of Miramichi Bay, and this is our 29th year of having a winter speaker series. And we, yeah, another good series here. So I'm going to go through a few slides about who we are, what we do, and then introduce our speaker, and then turn it over to Karen. So, Martin, do you see the duck slide?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So we are a very unique group in that we take a holistic approach to the environment and to the bay, sort of working in these four different areas: research, advocacy, land conservation, education, and a few slides highlighting each of these a little bit. A couple of things that stand out. It's really, and most of the stuff is on the website in our library, which is our electronic library, but multi-year circulation study of the bay. We've got animations there of how the water moves around in the bay and tributaries. It's very, very cool. We are doing the longest bald eagle aerial surveys in the state. This area here, sort of from here to up to Lewiston, Auburn, over to Augusta, and back down the Kennebec to Bath, generally, and then we go up to the Sebastopol sometimes when the river herring are running. We did a great project with caged mussels to determine whether mills were still discharging dioxins, and they changed their methodology up there for bleaching pulp. And not on here is a lot of PFAS work we've done, and are still doing PFAS monitoring largely around the air station, but in the watershed as well. And yeah, and a lot of work around fish passage. These are gruesome pictures of turbine mortality. The Brunswick Dam is being relicensed right now. We're working hard on that. Doing a lot of work with upgrading the Androscoggin River. We just got slammed in the legislature last week, but we'll be stay tuned. We'll be looking at some legal possibilities in the next few days and weeks. What good does it do if we're not getting the kids involved as well? Get them away from their digital devices and get them outside and get them dirty. You can see they're all having a horrible time here. It's great when we're at Bay Day and we have a lunch break, and fourth grade girl says, "I don't want to stop. I don't want to go home. I want to be an archaeologist." And this is a little outdated as well. We protected a lot of land. Our focus is on valuable wildlife habitat, and as opposed to trails and stuff. So plenty of opportunities for us people to recreate. So all the land is open, conservation easements open to the public at landowner discretion, and we own a couple of parcels in there open to the public for non-wildlife recreation. If you like tonight's presentation or want to see other past presentations, we've been recording for about a dozen years, I think. And if you go to our homepage, friendsofmiramichibay.org or fomb.org, scroll down the right side to education, and you can go down here to the video list, and you'll get to the event page for a particular topic, and then at the bottom will be the YouTube link to watch it. So, the rest of our series kind of getting towards the tail end here, but this next one should be really interesting. Connection between horses, slavery, and sugarcane business down in the Caribbean. And I believe there was a place down on the lower Kennebec, maybe called like Wild Horse Point, something, but there were horses that were captured down there that ended up being shipped down to plantations down south. So anyway, interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. Slime. Our guest tonight, Karen Coluzzi, is an entomologist at the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry in their Plant Health Division. She's a state survey coordinator for exotic pests and administers the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey program, or CAPS. CAPS program is funded by USDA, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS, and provides a mechanism for early detection of foreign plant pests and diseases that could be harmful to our excuse me, agriculture and natural resources. Karen coordinates exotic pest detection surveys throughout Maine, and she works with industry and stakeholders to raise awareness of harmful exotic pests, like she is doing tonight with us. And Karen has a master's in science in entomology, and that's from the University of Maine back in 2005. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to Karen. I should say before I forget, so I was about to, if you have questions and answers, use the chat box feature, please. We are recording this, so if you don't want to be recorded, you should leave. You can watch it on video in a few days when Martin has made that available. I want to thank Martin for doing that, coordinating our Zoom programs. Thank Karen for being here. And reminder to Karen and Martin to please turn your phones off so we don't get rings in the middle of the program. So with that, Karen's got her big slide up. I don't know if you want to show everyone your face and say hello at all or not, Karen, but I do see your big slide on the screen.
Oh, can you not see me?
No, I just see the big slide.
Oh,
So maybe it's because of how we warmed up.
yeah.
This came up automatically.
Well, if there's something I can do to change the view.
Karen, we can see your face. We're not seeing it full screen though.
Okay, so I don't even see Karen's small face, but that's probably something I'm doing here. So anyway, you can just go ahead and do your thing, Karen, and
Okay. All right.
we'll believe you that you're there.
Thanks, because I just saw me and I just minimized me because I don't want to look at me. So, um, well, thanks for having me tonight. I know that it's dinner time for most people, and so hopefully I can just get through and talk about the big parts or the important parts of my presentation. Um, but I want to acknowledge my technician, Haley Deppner Bruce. She's been working with me for the last couple years, and she's done a lot of work on this project called SlimeME or Maine, Terrestrial Gastropods of Maine. And I didn't know what kind of a background you were going to give for me, so I think I'm going to just rush through a little bit about myself because I think you did a fine job. I did get my master's of science in entomology, so I know insects and I don't really know snails and slugs. So please don't ask me any complicated questions about snails and slugs tonight. Um, I did some research of biological control for the Colorado potato beetle when I was a student at the University of Maine. And before I graduated, I was offered the position of state survey coordinator with the Maine Department of Agriculture, and I've been here since 2003. And I work in our department merged with conservation and forestry, so now it's this big amalgam thing, and nobody really knows what division I work in, but I work in the division of animal and plant health in plant health program. So it just seems to be like they're adding on layers and layers of different people I get to report to. And as Ed mentioned, I administer the CAPS program, which I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. And basically what I do is I just try to secure federal funding to conduct surveys and outreach projects in the state. So CAPS, as Ed mentioned, stands for Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey. It's a federal program, and the funding comes through the USDA. And the whole purpose of the program is to provide a second line of defense behind border inspections. So you've got the Customs and Border Patrol, stopping shipments of food, plant items or anything that could establish here and cause harm to our agriculture and natural resources. And so the Customs and Border Patrol do a great job at that. But some things can slip through. And so the idea of the CAPS program is to try to find things that may have slipped through. So we definitely, we target our surveys, primarily at borders and crossings, areas where plant pests could have snuck through. So each state has a CAPS program, and each state has a state survey coordinator. Just to give you a little bit of a background about the program. And basically how it works is that the USDA has a national priority pest list, and I go through this pest list. There's about maybe 100 organisms on it, insects, plant diseases, noxious weeds. And I go through and I try to figure out what could be harmful to what we have in Maine. And with the state list that I develop work plans. And the thing to note, I guess, is that these are all just 1-year projects. And I get paid pretty exclusively through this program. So I have to write work plans every year to try to fund my position and to do these projects. So it's just kind of an ongoing, like, trying to get money to keep myself alive here. But most of the projects I do are survey projects using traps and lures and sometimes just visual surveys. But every once in a while, I'll do some outreach projects, and I have to get funding for that through other means, which are more competitive. So it's really quite exciting when I can write a proposal or a suggestion to the USDA and say, hey, I want to do an outreach project. And the purpose of outreach projects is to enhance and increase public awareness of these exotic pest threats. And basically, because private citizens are often the ones are finding these organisms before we are, because there's just more eyes out there and more people noticing things than, me and my little assistant that puts traps up every so often. So outreach is extremely important to the CAPS program and to the other projects that I've been able to get through federal funding. And so just some examples of outreach projects that I've done through CAPS is the Forest Pest Outreach Project, where we basically wanted to make people aware of the Asian longhorn beetle, which is a federally regulated insect. Most people don't know that. And so having people aware of this insect and report sightings of it was the purpose of that project. And I've actually shuffled that project off to soil and water conservation districts, where they now are submitting proposals to get funding for that project. And another one I've been doing the last few years is firewood outreach. And that's an outreach project that is supporting sort of the Maine Forest Service ban on out-of-state firewood, because firewood is a pathway for introducing invasive, harmful tree-killing pests. And this is actually a photo of, so the last grant period for this project, we had billboards put up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And so this is a billboard that we had funding for, that we designed and put up on I-95 in New Hampshire coming into Maine. And so the next outreach project that I took on is this terrestrial mollusk project that we named SlimeME. And I just want to give you a little background about why why did we do a project like this? So just a little bit of a history. Well, first of all, terrestrial snails and slugs are on the USDA National Priority Pest List. In fact, they have over 20 species on their National Priority Pest List. And these are deemed to be invasive and could threaten our agriculture, as well as animal health. And I'll get into why that could occur. Um, and so here's an example of one of the species on the terrestrial snail and slug national priority pest list that the USDA has. It's the giant African land snail. It's established in Hawaii, and it keeps getting introduced into Florida, and Florida keeps trying to eradicate it. But it is a humongous snail. Luckily, we don't have to worry about it, as it appears to be tropical and wouldn't survive in Maine. But it's a voracious plant feeder, and it's destroyed crops. I'm not quite sure how Hawaii is dealing with it, but Florida is really counting that as a significant threat. And on the slug side of things, this is a European species called Arion vulgaris. It is from Europe, but mostly like in Spain or France, and it has invaded other countries where it's deemed probably the most important agricultural pest that Europe has seen in a long time. And it showed up in Canada in 2023. So this could be a significant threat to Maine, this Arion vulgaris species. And to complicate or sort of reinforce why we're doing this project, in 2018, it was brought to our attention that another Aryan slug species was being observed on Vinyl Haven. The USDA said you should collect some specimens so that we could molecularly identify it to make sure that it really is Aryan ater, which is a slug that the USDA did not think existed in the eastern part of the United States. It was only previously known in Washington state. So the fact that you can't really tell it apart morphologically from Arion vulgaris, which is on the USDA watch list, is another reason why we took on this project. There are different color morphs for both those species. So collecting them and getting them identified is important. So the first step we did was we did get the specimens from Vinyl Haven molecularly analyzed, and they were confirmed to be Aryan ater, which is not on the watch list. But the USDA said, well, how widespread is it in Maine? We're really surprised it's there. And so I put together a little survey project a few years ago. And this was just a little project just to try to see how widespread it was in Maine, to see if it was anywhere off of Vinyl Haven, and to see how widespread it is in Vinyl Haven. So we thought we could just do a survey using some beer-baited refugia, which is sort of a survey method that other countries have used for exotic snails and slugs. So we picked 10 sites and put these beer-baited cardboard down in some areas. We had actually a couple on Vinyl Haven too, as sort of a control to see how well they worked. We put these things near sort of ferry terminals too, thinking that if they did make it off Vinyl Haven, then maybe they're established around Rockland. We also put some in garden centers where a lot of exotic pests kind of show up anyway because of all the movement of plant material. And then sort of at the last minute, we decided, well, maybe we'll do a little outreach. And so we sent some letters and postcards to land trusts and extension offices, sort of mostly around the coast, a little bit, some inland too, and see if we get any response from people reporting any of these slugs. And so just some little bit of a result here. I mapped all the responses or all the positive identifications of Aryan Ader. They all were on Vinyl Haven. These were all photographic sort of samples that were sent to me that looked exactly like the slug that we had set um, to the lab to be confirmed. Um, no slugs, no Aryan slugs were found in any of our beer baited cardboard traps, but all the known everything we know about Aryan Ader's distribution has come through public feedback. So it turns out it's pretty widespread around Vinyl Haven. So it had to have been there for quite a while. And I'm just emphasizing the importance of outreach in this whole thing about looking for exotic pests and slugs. So then Arian vulgaris was found in Canada in 2023. So then I wrote a work plan to do to kind of harness the power of citizen science and uh, and it a little bit more money was involved, a little bit more work was involved in doing this project. And we wanted to use iNaturalist as sort of the platform for people to upload observations. It's if people, I'm going to kind of go through at the end if people aren't familiar with using iNaturalist. But it's a really neat way of seeing what people are observing and uploading and where those places are. And then we can monitor that site for accuracy of the uploads because it suggests identifications for the photographs that you have. And we can also look for some of the suspicious snails and slugs that are on the USDA watch list. So the first thing we did was we built a iNaturalist project page. We created some outreach materials, another type of postcard that we distributed to the public to get more involvement. We did two in-person trainings. One was on Vinyl Haven, one was in Camden. And it basically just told people about the snails and slugs, what they are, why we're concerned about them, how to photograph them, how to look for them. And then we did a couple of bio blitzes, which are basically just these two collecting events that we had. This all took place in 2024. Like I said, these projects are only 12-month projects. So when the grant's up, the grant's up. And then everything we know about snails and slugs in Maine comes from this publication from 2000 that Scott Martin did for the Northeastern Naturalist, where he compiled a bunch of references and records through literature review about every kind of snail and slug species that have ever been recorded or mentioned to have been in Maine. And he sort of compiled it into this, what I call sort of the Bible of what we know about what is here in Maine. He lists 92 species. And he does have a caveat with everything, though. He says that some of the identifications that he gathered could be wrong. And these days, it does take DNA analysis to really discern species of different snails and slugs and not just going on how things look like. And then some species names were used interchangeably in the past. So the same specimen could have been called two different things. So some of the species that are in his publication could be the one species that has two different names. So the so it could be overrepresenting what we actually have here in the state. So we thought, wow, it might be kind of cool to see how this list in the Martin publication compares with the observations we're getting uploaded to iNaturalist. So we thought that's a nice little kind of byproduct to this whole project. And then because I can't just look for Arian vulgaris, I went to the USDA watch list, and these are the 20 or so different snails and slugs that are on the USDA watch list. Some of them are just the genus name, so who knows how many species are involved. But I kind of went through the biology of most of these. The ones in the lighter color are slugs, and the ones in the darker color are snails. And I picked out the few that I thought could establish in Maine. And then I kind of created my own target list of what to kind of keep an eye out for when I'm looking, when I'm looking around, but also when I'm looking on the iNaturalist page. So now I'm going to stop that for a second and put on my little bit of like professor hat and just kind of go back and talk about what are snails and slugs, kind of give a little bit of background about what they are and what they do and how they behave. And these are materials that were in our training presentation, so I felt like I needed to use them. So I like to sort of, how are they classified? What other organisms do they relate to? So they actually relate to us because we're all animals. So at the kingdom level, we are very similar. Um, they are in the phylum, the mollusk phylum, and the some famous mollusks. So they're quite related to clams, octopus, and what common feature that all mollusks have is this thing called a mantle, which is a part of the body that covers the internal organs. And so that's how snails and slugs are related to clams and octopus, although they're in a different class. And the class that snails and slugs belong to is the Gastropoda class, which basically translates to belly foot. And that is how they move around on their belly foot. So gastropods are second only to insects in terms of diversity. There are about 80,000 living species of gastropods in the world. And they're found in a variety of habitats, and some of them you're probably well aware of the different ones. So in marine environments, you've got the periwinkles, the conchs, and you've got a sea slug, which is an actual gastropod. And then they're found in aquatic environments, although aquatic slugs are pretty rare. And I don't know if we have any aquatic slugs in the United States or not. But if you're, if you ever go to Damerscott Lake and other lakes around the state, you might notice certain times of the year these humongous Chinese mystery snails, and that's an invasive that has invaded our freshwater systems in the state, unfortunately. But what we're concerned about, because these are plant pests, are the terrestrial snails and slugs. And so here's a few. So malacologists, or the people that study snails and slugs, actually don't even use the word slugs to describe the shellless snail. So according to malacologists, all slugs are snails just without shells, but I'm going to use the word slug because I think it would be too confusing not to. So the big difference between snails and slugs is, well, snails have this shell. And so what are the benefits of having a shell? It protects you from predators and it protects you from drying out, which is really important for snails and slugs. They don't want to dry out. They do like moisture. Slugs, snails without shells, the benefits, what are the benefits? Why would they have benefits? Because being able to hide from predators and prevent desiccation seem really good too. But the fact that slugs don't have to find environments that have calcium allows them to be more in different places, and they can hide in holes, so they can escape predation at some point. And then we have this thing in between, and I'm not even sure if we have any of these I don't think we have any semi-slugs in Maine, let alone the US. And there does not seem to be any apparent benefit between to being a semi-slug. It just seems like it's kind of caught halfway in this evolutionary cycle, but they still exist. So because slugs are just like snails without shells, they do have very similar anatomy, and just a couple of the body parts to pay attention to. And this is what helps us identify or discern species from each other. The mantle, the shape of the mantle, the size of the mantle, where the breathing pore is situated on the mantle, whether it has a keel or not. The color of the sole is a very important feature too. And as you can see here, that the snails and slugs have pretty much all the same body parts, except snails, of course, have the shell. And they do have this interesting feature inside their mouth called a radula. In fact, all mollusks do, not just gastropods. And it's basically a tongue-like organ that has thousands of teeth on it, and that is what's responsible for kind of the rasping feeding that they do. So the life cycle is also similar to of both snails and slugs. And I don't really want to get into the mating aspect of snails and slugs, but it's worth mentioning that they are, for the most part, hermaphroditic, which means that they contain both male and female sexual organs. So they can self-fertilize, although most prefer to mate. And then, so they'll mate, they will lay already fertilized eggs in the ground, depending on the species, but um, in general, they have a 1 year life cycle. Some slugs and snails will mate only once and then die, although some can mate multiple times. And the egg laying generally occurs in early summer or fall. With snails, they hatch about a month later with a small translucent shell. And they grow the shell by adding calcium to the outer edge, which I thought was interesting. I thought it would all come from the central point, but no, they add calcium to the outer edge. And you know that you've seen an adult shell because they will form a lip on that outer edge once they stop growing and they're full-size adults. So slugs, basically the same thing. They'll lay a clutch of eggs, generally in some moist soil. It takes about a month or so for the juvenile slugs to hatch, and then they start feeding as soon as they hatch. And basically, adult slugs look like bigger versions of the juvenile slugs. So they don't really change form too much. So, what do their diet consists of? Well, the terrestrial snails and slugs are concerned to the USDA because they do feed on plants, and that's probably their herbivore nature is probably most preferred or most what you see with snails and slugs. But they can often eat fungi, algae, mushrooms. They will eat animal scat. They'll eat dead and rotting organic matter. And they'll also eat other animals. So they're not that picky. They'll eat pretty much whatever they see. And I think maybe during their life cycle, they might crave certain nutritional have certain nutritional needs. And snails will actually consume some soil and rock particles, and that helps with the growth of the calcium. They want the calcium to grow their shell. So some of the good things about slugs and snails, well, they're considered nature's recyclers. They decompose organic matter. And they also are yummy food for other animals, including humans. And they disperse pollen and spores, so they are beneficial in many ways. But they are also um, pretty bad in a lot of ways. Some of them are voracious feeders, and some of them will destroy a crop overnight. And especially if you get an invasive one in whose populations can grow out of control, and you don't have any natural enemies to kind of keep their populations in check, you might have a really hard time managing this kind of invasion. And because they will eat carcasses and excrement from other animals, they do pick up parasites, and this is how they become harmful to livestock. They pick up a parasite that's responsible for rat lungworm, and it's sort of a natural cycle for this parasite to go between rats and snails and slugs. And so if you've got any snails and slugs feeding in pastures where you've got livestock grazing, um, they it causes a meningitis, and humans can actually also get the meningitis if they are not careful. And it's important to wash your hands if you handle anything that slugs and snails have been on. That's my PSA for tonight. Wash your hands after touching a snail and slug. And so this Martin document, I'm going to go through the different species that he has in this document. Of snails, there are 76 species listed. 72 are considered native to the United States, and only 4 are considered non-native. So they came over, they hadn't been documented before the arrival of colonial era, perhaps, or they've been here for quite a while, but they are new. Let's see, they're not from the United States, but just because they're not native doesn't mean that they're invasive. So these are fairly benign snails, except maybe the brown garden snail, which some states have it regulated. So yeah, so only 4 of the 76 species in Martin's document are considered non-native. 72 are considered native. And here's just sort of a sampling of the different native snails that you might find in Maine. They come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes and colors. Yeah, so they're neat. And so in Martin's document, only 16 species of slug are known, and only 5 are considered native to the United States. So more than half are considered non-native. And these are the native ones. The meadow slug is really, really common. You probably would notice it it's like the first slug to be noticed in the spring, summer, early summer. It's usually around the ground, under trees. It's harmless rather, sorry. And then 4 species of mantle slugs, and they're called mantle slugs because that mantle feature extends from the head to the tail. So it's just one kind of continuous material going the whole length of the slug. And of the non-native slugs, we have the milky slug. We have a series, we have three species of limacid slugs, which are the biggest slugs that we have here in Maine. You may have come across the leopard slug. Even though these are non-native, it doesn't mean that they are invasive, and it doesn't mean that they are pests necessarily. And they're certainly not on the USDA watch list. And then rounding out the last 7 species of non-native slugs that were mentioned in the Martin document are Aryan slugs. And some of them you probably recognize, especially the dusky slug, I think is probably the most commonly seen throughout the summer and fall. I see it everywhere. And even though Aryan Ader was mentioned in the Martin document, it's unclear if it was identified correctly. The USDA thinks that our find in 2018 would be close to the first find in Maine, but Martin does mention that it had been recorded back in 1928, but there's no way of verifying that, unfortunately. So just a little bit of difference between the 2 largest slugs that we have in Maine is some of these features that we want to pay attention to when we're trying to figure out if we have an Aryan slug, which is what we're trying to look for, those certain species, like the vulgaris species. So that breathing pore, that pneumostome, is found on the front half of the mantle in the Aryan slug, and it's found on the back half of the mantle in the limacid slugs. And limacid slugs also have this keel, which is kind of this raised area that goes along the back. The Aryan slug does not. Another reason why the Aryan slugs are called these roundback slugs is because when they're disturbed, they constrict into like a hump, like a rounded back, and none of the other slugs will do that. So some ways of looking for snails and slugs when you go out and find them. They're generally only active at nighttime when it's cool and wet. So you can go out with a flashlight if you want and look for snails and slugs. But it's fun to look for them during the day also because they would just be under a bunch of things. You look under rocks, you look under trees, logs, branches, damp leaf litter, under flower pots, especially snails. They would be near anything any kind of stone. They want to be in environments that give off a little bit of calcium. So that's a good place to find snails. And so now I'm sort of getting into the part where this is what helps us figure out what we have for certain species of snails and slugs if people are going to be uploading observations to iNaturalist. So photographing snails and slugs the proper way really helps with our identification of what they are. And so ideally, uploading 3 photographs for each specimen is helpful for us to really know what kind of species we have. So an above view helps show the color and the texture and the size of the mantle. The photographing the right side of the slug shows where that breathing pore is and in relation to the location on the mantle. And also the underside, the sole or the foot fringe is pretty diagnostic for for telling what kind of species we have. And with snails, the similar thing, an above shot is great. A profile shot is great. Knowing the height of the shell is really important in diagnostic. And putting an object in your photo of known proportions really helps us figure out what size of snails and slugs we're dealing with. A lot of them only operate within certain size ranges. And then again with shells, or I mean with snails, photographing the aperture, the opening of the shell. It has a particular shape, how it attaches to the coil. Those are all diagnostic features too to help identify species. And so for the folks that don't know what iNaturalist is, it's a platform for citizen science, for citizen scientists, and it actually helps researchers like me kind of look for population data. You upload, you can just use it to identify what you see. So you can take a picture of something, you can upload it. You don't have to submit the picture. You can just see what it suggests for an identification. So that's really helpful. And it records where and when you've taken your observation. And you can go in and see what other people have observed. It's a really neat tool for those that don't have never used it and don't know anything about it. But so just quickly, how does one record an observation? Well, the first thing you want to do is download the app onto your phone, and you can create a free account. I wonder if I can kind of walk you through it. Yeah, so download an account or download the app, create a free account, hit the observe button, and you get a series of options here. You can take a picture right away. You can upload something that's from your library. You can actually record a sound, and it could identify what the sound is or suggest an identification. So once you take your photos, they're not submitted yet. They kind of just show up at the top there. And there's this, if you click on that box that says, what did you see? A bunch of suggested identifications come up. If you're not completely sure which one it is, then you would pick something pretty general, like this person picked just amber snails in the family Succinidae instead of picking a particular species, because with amber snails, there are a lot of different species and you can't really tell them apart. And then you hit the share button. If your geo privacy is on open, that means anyone can see the location of the photograph that you've uploaded. If you say it's obscured, then just a kind of a random spot, not an exact location shows up. And if you say private, no location shows up. So that's really not that helpful if we want to see where people are uploading observations from. And so after you've created an account with iNaturalist, you can join the project page SlimeME. That QR code, if you pointed your phone at it with your camera, it'll bring up the SlimeME project page, or you can get to it in your app by clicking projects and then selecting or joining and then selecting the SlimeME terrestrial gastropod page. And so if you were working at your computer and you went to iNaturalist and went to the SlimeME terrestrial gastropod page, this is what it would look like. It shows you how many observations were made, how many species have been uploaded according to the suggested identifications that AI did, and AI is getting a lot better at suggesting these identifications. How many people are out there trying to identify what these are after they're uploaded, and how many observers there are. And so this is quite impressive. So all in Maine, there have been 5,613 observations of terrestrial snails and slugs. And I clicked the species button there to show what species were most observed, and it goes in sort of descending order. So the most observed was the dusky slug. And so with this information on the project page, I can plug in species of my target list into that search bar and see if any of these 5,600 whatever observations was one of these groups on my target list. And so I put in Arion vulgaris, the Spanish slug, and it said no results were found, which is great, which is and then I put in all the other, and I got the same result. So there have not been any public observances of any of the USDA target list specimens, but because Arion ater could potentially be mistaken for Arion vulgaris, I searched for Arion ater. And there were 21 observations made in Maine. And if you can see the red splotches there, they are all on Vinyl Haven. So I am pretty confident that all of those Arion slugs are Arion ater. If we had found points up towards the Canadian border, I would be more worried that it could have been Arion vulgaris. So with all of this, there's a lot to think about and a lot to ponder, and still more work to do. So which would require me to write another project work plan to do more work, because we haven't really been able to spend much time comparing the 62 species that have been uploaded to iNaturalist with the 92 species that were reported in the Martin paper. So which species are missing? Why are they missing? Have some been renamed or lumped together? Are we seeing anything in iNaturalist that hadn't been recorded in the Martin paper? So still a lot of things to go through, which we haven't done yet. We want to continue to monitor the page for any new species that show up, and to verify any of the suggested identified uploads that have gone up. And then we want to finish the field guide. So I didn't mention this, but because my worker is so efficient and so tech savvy, she had extra time and created a pictorial guide of the terrestrial snails and slugs known from Maine. And this is mostly based on Martin's document, but also on the observations that we are getting in iNaturalist. Some of the pages include the species that are on the watch list. And so it's meant to be like a field guide, maybe yay big, and hopefully will be portable enough to take out in the field. And it's chock full of information and great pictures. And she just did an amazing job. We can't have it published, though. She's done about 7 drafts. And each time I've gone through it, suggested changes, I've sent it to the USDA malacologist, who also was vetting the information, providing different photographs for us. But then there was the federal government layoffs. That malacologist got laid off, and by the time she came on board, our grant ended, and we no longer had any funding to finish working on this field guide. But this is something that we're hoping we can get going again in the near future. And with that, I think I'm done talking about Slime Maine. And I'm going to stop sharing my presentation and see if anybody has any questions.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Karen.
Sure.
I think there was maybe one question or two in there, but I'm gonna start with a couple. Just what do we know about lifespan of these critters, and how do you age them? Like freshwater mussel, you look at annular rings. Count them that way. How about snails and slugs?
Yeah, I may have probably brushed by that really quickly. So most of them are annual. So that most of them just have a 12-month life cycle. Some of the Aryan species could live for 2 years, and I don't know if we would necessarily know if the a particular slug that we've collected is 1 year old or 2 years old unless we dissect it and I think probably do some examining of its internal structure. But that I would not I am not a slug dissector, so I don't know. I don't know how malacologists actually would age some of these specimens. But in
And
but in general, they have a 1 year life cycle, most snails and slugs.
so presumably then it's eggs that are dormant in the soil or something over the winter and would hatch out in the spring, or what
Um,
happened?
yep, so in some species, the eggs are overwintering, and in some species, so when the eggs are laid in early summer, they're hatching, so they're likely overwintering as adult or older juveniles. So I think it really depends on the species.
Okay. So they could overwinter.
Yeah.
One of our guests pointed out that, and you may know about this, if anyone's interested in the snail sex side of things, WNYC Radio Lab podcast just put out an episode on this on March 6th. Very interesting and entertaining, and she's got the link there in the chat.
Oh, that's really timely.
Absolutely. So found it that way, right? So
Yeah.
Paul wonders about salt air and thinking that because salt tends to dehydrate critters, right? I think that would discourage them.
Yeah, that is true. I'm not sure if the concentrations are high enough, or would offset the moisture that is also associated with salt air. Um, yeah. Is this asking like why is the Aryan Ader slug doing so well on Vinyl Haven and pretty much only on Vinyl Haven?
I mean, that was my thought in seeing that map initially was, why are they all out on Vinyl Haven? You know,
Yeah,
didn't think about the salt factor, but is it
yeah,
sailors that are bringing them in, or or what's the
yeah. It's a little bit of a mystery. And I haven't figured it out because I've got my theories, but I mean, there is some old documentation that, of course, it's recorded in that Martin paper that Arian Ader was reported from Vinyl Haven in 1928. That was quite a long time ago, and it was around during the time where the granite industry was pretty booming.
yeah,
And
port workers or shipping? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so there's also I found something published, I think it was an old historical Vinyl Haven document that said that species of slug was initially or intentionally introduced to Vinyl Haven around that time to grease the wheels of some of the machines that they used when they were harvesting the granite.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah, I know. But why the USDA wouldn't acknowledge that that species existed out there for as long as it had is I don't know. It's a mystery. I'm not sure what to think of it all. And if it had been out there since 1928, it probably would have found its way on the mainland somehow, I'm thinking.
Interesting that, so many of the fish oils were used, right, for everything, pogie oil and stuff, and
Yeah.
this would be like a heavier weight oil, maybe for some of the
Yeah.
machinery.
Yeah. But
Now, Paul also asked the best way to discourage from a garden patch, salt or beer traps on the outside, or what, how do you do that?
um well, I have heard that putting cups of beer helps attract them in. Uh, I don't see why putting a barrier around your patch wouldn't work, like a metal kind of like strips of copper or I was going to say diatomaceous earth.
Say diatomaceous earth or borax, right? Something granular like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But knowing that some snails, does diatomaceous earth have calcium in it? I don't even know. Diatoms. Yeah, they're made of calcium carbonate, aren't they?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that might attract them, but I think they might have a hard time crossing it if it's a wide enough barrier. So, yeah, the pest management side of things is definitely not my forte. So, I I couldn't tell you what really works, but I've just heard of, stuff that people have tried.
And with the, I mean, with the beer, it's like it's like putting a Japanese beetle trap up. Are you attracting more of them, or are you know, you killing them? Are you attracting more to the garden area? So that sort of quantum
Yeah,
will, whereas a straight barrier is probably a better way to
yeah,
keep them out without attracting them.
yeah. Yeah,
With
I guess it depends on how much effort you want to put into it.
what are the major crops in Maine that are most affected by these guys?
Well, like by Arian vulgaris, if we were to get Arian vulgaris,
Yeah, or snails and slugs in general. I mean, is it commercially wise, strawberries. I don't see them on my blueberries. Uh,
right,
greens, obviously, I guess. Lettuce.
greens, yeah. Yeah, I think any kind of garden environment will attract because they seem to prefer eating plant material. So, and lettuce is so easy to eat, so you'll often find the smaller ones on the lettuce, maybe some bigger ones on the fruit. So yeah, even our native snails and slugs are problematic in some environments. And so trying to control those are, that's something for cooperative extension to help you with. Controlling pests is not my forte. Finding pests is, but not controlling them.
What about Bulgaris? That's like the primary pest in Spain, right? So what they eat everything?
Yeah. Yes,
Oh,
they will eat everything, and they feed in such a gregarious manner so that you've just got a lot of them, and they're huge, and they will just chow down whatever they see. Um, they're not picky. And of course, if you've got like a monoculture of something that's really easy for them to eat, they'll just go for it. They also impact ornamental plantings too. I'm not sure exactly which species. Um, and another problem with Arian vulgaris is it outcompetes native
Mhm.
snails or native slugs. They will actually cannibalize native slugs, and they'll take over their territory, and they're just highly aggressive and highly invasive. Yeah.
In talking about their diet, it's, they sound sort of like eels, that eat anything pretty much. Um,
Yeah.
and thinking about, escargot, right? Really good eating, in my opinion. I don't know if those are, they're probably raised, in a escargot ranch, but these are probably mostly edible, but you probably want to be pretty cautious about where they're from, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, eat, you mean eat? Yeah.
Yeah, hook
Us
'em
eating
all.
the
Yeah,
snail.
you know,
Yeah.
it's like green
Yeah.
crabs. Well, they're good to eat, right? Good way to maybe deal with that problem. But what about snails and slugs? Do we know if they have a high burden of pesticides, for example, or toxins?
I kind of don't think so. I don't think that most people are controlling for snails and slugs the same way that they would control for insects. I mean, some of them, I guess, use mollucides. If there's a population that's really kind of detrimental to a particular crop, but I'm
But they're
not familiar with many.
they're walking on everything, though, right? If it's been sprayed, aren't they absorbing some of that?
Oh, yeah. Do they? Oh, so are you asking if they're picking up toxins?
Yes, that's what.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. I think they have found traces of pesticides or insecticides, perhaps even herbicides in, in bodies of snails and slugs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why anyone would want to eat any of them, but.
Well, have you ever
To
eaten?
each his own, I guess. I don't know.
Have you ever eaten snails, escargot, or no?
My brother we grew up in Rhode Island and we'd go to the beach and he would pick periwinkles off the rocks and
Yeah.
bring them home and take like a pin out of my mom's sewing kit and extract the meat of the periwinkle and just eat them like raw. And he's still alive. I don't
Well,
know.
they're good. And butter and garlic, right? What's not good with butter and garlic on it, right?
He didn't put anything on them. He just popped them in. So, yeah.
Know people that have been out on islands and whatnot, and they're eating limpet snails or whatever they.
Yeah. I would definitely cook them first, just in case there are, bacteria or parasites that are, or other toxins that,
Um,
yeah,
how are they
they
all?
will absorb toxins for sure. So, if
Are,
not the parasites, so
are they
something different.
all? Are they all getting here the way that any other invasive gets here, pretty much by boat on pallets and in loads of whatever, firewood?
Snails and slugs likely get here on plant material, imported plant material. Especially plant material that might have a little bit of like soil or medium associated with it. So there could be eggs in near like the roots. Um, so that that's how they could be getting here. They're probably hitchhiking in crates as adults. Like I can see snails doing that and being able to withstand some like longer, drier conditions because they can retract into their shell and preserve some of their moisture. So they might be able to withstand some, long ocean voyages overseas. I don't know how it got to Canada, that slug. I don't know if anyone really knows right now. It is a fairly new find.
Well, we you know that obviously we import so much. Every country imports a lot of food, right? For fresh produce, so it's probably pretty easy for it to get
Yeah,
it there. Or as you say, nursery's got to be a hotbed for introduced, you know,
yeah,
critters,
yeah.
the dirt and the food coming in together. Um, Shells, are snails creating their shell from scratch pretty much, or are some of them going and finding old ones and colonizing, ready-made homes?
No, they come out of their eggs with a shell already intact.
So that's a lot of shell to put on in a year, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, the bigger ones, yeah, they are putting on a lot of shell in a year.
high energy process.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Is your
like that giant African land snail, I don't know how long they live for. They might live more than 2 or 3 years. That's a really big snail. It might take a while to get that big.
with your field guide, is that available electronically at all? You know,
Well, we can't really give it out because it hasn't been fully vetted by the USDA yet. It still needs to go through
it's got
some
to be.
final review. Well, the malacologist just kind of got back on board,
Mhm.
and we, I think, so I think we need to go and update according to her comments, but we don't have a grant anymore to spend time on it. That's the problem. We could do it in our spare time, but
Mhm. All of that, right?
or I can write another grant and try to finish it off, which would be good. Yeah.
Well, mostly we've had a lot of comments in the survey, just appreciative of your presentation, fantastic presentation. Thank you,
Thank
great
you.
information, very interesting, well done.
Thank
Uh,
you. Well,
well
thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it. And
done, and we had
yeah.
people
All
here.
right. Well, thank
So
you.
we will have this, I'll send you a link in a few days when we get this up on the web, and then you could share it however you would like.
Okay.
And what I'll probably do, you sent me the PDF, I'll look at it and then put it up in our library. So at least there's a resource there.
Okay.
Keep it.
Sure. That
So,
sounds good.
and
All right. Well, thank you.
sure. And if we can help you with any field, uh, sampling or testing or anything like that, just, give me a,
Well, I hope everybody puts iNaturalist on their phones. And
well, so for the one dinosaur on this call, that would be me. Who doesn't have a phone. It does I
oh, uh,
can I
well, then
upload
you can't help me.
can I upload stuff onto the iNaturalist from the computer or not? I take photos with a camera.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. That's how I started doing it too. I'm sort of a, yeah, Luddite myself.
Mhm.
It took me a while to put the app on my phone. So that's how I've been doing it. I've been doing the multi-step process, going from my camera to the computer to the, yeah,
Right.
uploading it that way. You certainly can do that for sure.
Well, I will certainly be keeping my eye out for slugs and snails with a different eye than I saw them before.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right. And
All
thanks,
right.
thanks again, Martin, and thank everybody for coming. And hopefully we'll see some of you next month for horses, sugar, and slavery, a good area of the world where probably some of our slugs come from, I'm going to guess, right out of the sugarcane plantations,
Could be. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good night, everyone.